stars, rock and rolling through the cool guitars. Chuck's got the questions, digging so sharp, peeling back layers, hitting the heart. Chuck Shute podcast, blowing your mind. Every topic.
Thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the show. So, getting the band back together, right? Because there's been a hiatus.
There has been a hiatus, yes.
Yeah. So, what have you been up to?
Oh man, it's just wild living life like everybody else. You know, we've all, we're all still good friends, so we still hang out and see each other. But we just weren't jamming, and we decided, maybe back in 2016, 2017, to start writing again, which produced a collection of singles, and then invariably it led us back to the stage, which leads us here, you and I talking together.
Yeah. So the new single is called "Now You Belong with the Dead." That's a great title. Who is that about? Is that about someone specific?
No, it's about everything and everyone. That's the way most songs are these days. But no, I appreciate that. The title is actually taken from a line in the horror movie The Mummy. The full line is, "I loved you once, but now you belong with the dead."
Okay, so which mummy though? Because there's like the Brendan Fraser, and then there's like the old.
Oh, the original. Yeah, the original. From
Yeah.
back, whatever that was.
So you're a big horror movie fan then?
Not necessarily the hugest, but that line stuck out to me when watching it. There was just an eloquence about it. It summed up, so many emotions. It summed up the emotion of rage. It sums up the emotion of closure. It sums up the emotion of moving on. And I just thought it to be an incredibly poetic way to express yourself. So the line just stuck with me once I heard it.
No, that is a great line. Did they get a songwriting credit?
Well, thankfully it's the original, so I think we're out of any copyright concerns.
Yeah. Because what year's that? That's got to be like, was it like 30s or 40s or something?
It's something like that. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like the original 1930s version of the Mummy, the heroine says it. That's how old it is. It's identified as the heroine in the movie.
Yeah. Do you go back and watch a lot of those old movies, or is this like something that you just remember from watching as a kid or whatever?
I remember reading the line somewhere as part of a script. It was just something I was reading anecdotally about that movie, and just, I don't know, I was down a bit of a rabbit hole when I was reading about it. Just kind of, I don't know. I think really just the way the script was written in this clip was what got me. And then I just caught that line and I was like, man, that's just an awesome turn of phrase right there. And it just stuck with me, and then we needed a title and it seemed to be a perfect complement to the subject matter. So
yeah, no, that's perfect. I love that. I love that kind of stuff. I love stuff too that stands out, because that stands out a little bit. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of songs that, because I'm a big hair metal fan. I'll admit it, but like there's a lot of hair metal songs that have the same title. You know what I mean? Like the bands, like I'm like, wait, there's already a song called that. You couldn't come up with a different, title for that. Like it's kind of it's annoying when things are too cliched, I guess.
Right. Yeah. This one definitely felt like it had something unique about it. So
yeah. Is that what you look for as well when you're writing music? Because I mean, your band has a cult following. Like a lot of people really appreciate the music that you're making. It is more like, and when I listen, it sounds more original. It doesn't sound like you're trying to sound like someone else.
Oh, I appreciate that. I mean, I think, ultimately, to your point, it's very difficult to have an original thought these days, right? There's a lot of brain power in the world thinking about the same subject matter. So, song titles, I think, can very easily become, duplicative when you think about it. You think you have a good song title in a lyric or in a moment, and then all of a sudden you search it in Spotify and there's 37 songs with the same title. It's like, oh man. But again, it's like sometimes you really just happen upon these turns of phrase that are really interesting. And but that one just happened to stick out. And we've had a couple of those, I think, throughout the band's kind of discography, where the titles were really informed by something special. We just tried to hold on to it.
Yeah. So sometimes when you're having a writing session, you'll kill ideas if it's something that has already been done before. It's too cliched.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? It's like lyrically, I think that there's subject matter that, it's easy to rehash. So there's a diligence that goes into like, what is it that we want to say? What's the most interesting and compelling way to say that? And then, how do you kind of make it unique and your own? When we think about like, you know, chorus lyrics or song titles or the things that you will just kind of instantly find salient when you're listening to a song, like, oh, I remember the song title, I remember the chorus, I remember key phrases throughout the song. I think those things are always important. As a writer, you want to make sure that you have these lyrical moments for people to gravitate towards within that message, right? Because you want to have a certain perspective or give a certain point. But how you do that, I think, is really interesting. I don't know if there's any right or wrong way or good or bad way to write a song or a lyric or, any of that. There's just what works in the moment in the song that you're writing and what can potentially be a song later on. So, if we're writing something and I have a lyric and it doesn't fit, it doesn't make it bad or wrong. It just means it doesn't fit for right now. So put it off to the side. And then when we start writing the next song, we can start around that phrasing or that emotion or that note, and then begin the journey again. And then that'll be perfect. So, it's just an exercise of finding what's the right fit at the right moment.
So you can start with any, you could start with a lyric, or it could start with a riff, or could it, does songs ever start with for you guys, does it ever start with a drum beat or like just something totally different?
You typically how we write is, the instrument bearing members of the band, generally Jay and Brendan, will get together and they have riffs and structures and thoughts about what the songs should look and sound like. They start to take shape really with them, kind of just hammering out the parts that they have. Now, I might have a lyrical idea or a progression, or hey, I want to start a song like this, or hey, man, I have this idea about going from a pre-chorus to a chorus, and we do a stop, and then I do say this word and hold this note. So it's like very formative. It's very loose. It's just kind of directional. Generally, they'll shape out, a song and kind of hammer out the parts. And then from there, I get it, and I start to think about phrasing and syllables and note structure. And then the song continues to evolve. The lyrics continue to evolve. And then everything kind of starts to form, once we have a structure. And once we say, okay, the notes will go here and they'll go in this pattern, and these will be the syllable placements, and these will be the, where we put the words, and these will be where we don't put words, then you could start to fit a particular message into that phrasing. And then you start to think about how it sounds when it's in that phrasing. Do I have enough time to express a thought? Do I need two lines instead of one line? And because you don't want it to be like just short poppy sentences, you want to have a coherent thought when you read the lyrics, like, oh, this is about something, or, motivated by something, or, intentionally about something. So,
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the songwriting process. Like I heard one of my cohort podcasters use the phrase, I never heard this phrase before, but he's like, change a word, get a third. Like, do you guys have, because it sounds like for your band, it sounds like it's more collaborative where everyone's kind of working, like not somebody's just changing one word and gets the songwriting credit.
Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of diligently working on the song itself. And, we don't necessarily think so much about, that piece of it per se. I think that as long as we're all working and standing in service of the song, then contributions are equal, getting into a place where it feels good. If we're all working on it together, it's not necessarily about, oh, I contributed this piece, so it's just about let's make the best song possible. And if we're all collectively working towards that, then we're all in the boat together.
Yeah. Do you like that process the best of, because to me that would be, I mean, I'm not musically talented. I wish I was, but if I was, I feel like that would be the coolest thing, is creating something new, like making new songs. I guess performing would be fun too, though, because then you have the crowd and you can see their reaction.
Yeah, I mean, for us, and again, I can only speak for us and really, primarily for myself, but I think we enjoy the act of writing that song together. Like when you're a kid and you're in the room with your friends and like you play a riff and you're like, that's the best riff. And then you bash out a drum beat, like, that's the best drum beat. You know, that kind of like whimsical childlike emotion still exists, even though we're old men now. But the idea of like, you play a riff, you're like, God damn, dude, that's awesome. And then, you know, kick in with the bass and then drums kick in, you're like, holy shit, listen to this thing. And then, you know, it's like, wow, what's words here? You know, this would be awesome. It's like that momentum is like where the real excitement is. Because to be fair, if you're moving at that level, then you're moving when you're recording it in the same direction. And then when you're playing it live, you're excited. And then the audience is like, whoa, you're killing it. Like it all kind of has to start there. So we focus all our efforts at that part, because if we can get the ball rolling there, then everything moves quite seamlessly. But yeah, to your point, you play it live and that's kind of like the end result. That's the payoff, you know, is when people are like going nuts to it and you're like, I knew it. I knew people would, you know.
But so do you ever get disappointed though? Because like for me, it just in terms of a podcast, like there's times where it's a similar kind of thing. Like I book a guest and I'm really excited I got this guest on, and then I start doing the research and I get the questions. I'm like, oh, I got the best questions for this guy. And then I do the interview and I leave the interview and I go, oh my, it's like a high. Like I just killed this interview. It's so amazing. And then you put it out there to the world. And then, yeah, like the cherry on top is like, if people actually watch it and comment and say, oh, that was great. But then sometimes you get the opposite. Either no one watches it or people comment and say, you suck as an interviewer. These questions are terrible. And you get all these trolls. You're like, shit. Okay. Well, I just pissed people off.
Well, you know, I mean, I think ultimately, right, like, and I'm sure you'd agree, you probably have to miss the mark pretty badly to think that it's like amazing, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, dude, this is the worst thing you've ever done. You're like, how did I miss that?
It happens. It happens. You'd be surprised. I don't know.
You know? But again, you can't really control how people react to stuff. And that's the thing, right? You can just know that you've controlled everything that you can control. You're proud of the output. You believe in the questions. You believe in the answers that you got. We believe in the songs that we wrote and the messages and the intention. Maybe people just didn't get enough time to spend with it, or maybe they just, you know, weren't introduced to it the right way. Maybe they weren't, you know, in the right frame of mind or in a position where they could really absorb it. So like, there's a few things that once it leaves you, you can't control. But ultimately, if you're doing it with pace, you'll find that more often than not, it works. And, you know, you could bat 350 and that's a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah. I'm assuming, I mean, if you're like most musicians, probably the part of being in the music business you hate is the business part and the management and the marketing and all that record contracts and all that shit, right? Like you just want to make music and you want people to like it, but it's hard like to do all that other stuff to get it marketed. That's kind of a pain in the ass, right?
Well, I mean, you know, there is a work that goes into it. The business of the music business is definitely that. You know, I will say though that if going away for 20 years and then coming back has given me any sort of perspective, the democratization of the industry, I think, is probably the biggest and most seismic shift. Because in truth, back in 2004, if I wanted to have this conversation with you, I needed to have a publicist. If I needed people to hear my music at scale, I needed to have a radio guy. If I wanted people to see me, I had to have a video guy. And then if I wanted to be on tour, I had to have an agent. And if I wanted to be sold, I had to have a record label. And all of that hierarchy creates gatekeepers. It creates, you know, a system of, you know, malicious intent at times. So there's not really like an even playing field. Now I can have a conversation with an audience at will. You know, I can create things and immediately release them. I can get instantaneous feedback. I can get to scale very quickly through paid media, and I can work on engagement and salience and, you know, the right emotional connection to that art. I could never do that before. Now, to your point, it's a lot more work, but it's a lot more control that just didn't exist 20 years ago. So that part I think is like really interesting, because I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying that if you work really hard and then you realize some independent gatekeeper isn't going to let you through, that's an unfairness that just doesn't necessarily exist today, at least not in the same ways. So the cosmic observation of the changes continuously amazes me, how much different it is between then and now.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't. Explain to me what happened with, because you guys were on Roadrunner, and then did I read this right? It was something like they wanted your next album to be more commercial, and you guys were like, "No, we're not going to do that. Like, let us out of here. We don't want to get out of this contract." Is that what happened?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Yes, I mean, in short, yeah, that's pretty much the story. With a little bit of context, we were a band that was, independent for about 7 years. We released a variety of EPs, toured up and down the East Coast, and then when we signed with Roadrunner, we were in the hallowed halls of heavy metal greatness. We were staring at the plaques of the contemporaries that we had always admired, from Typo Negative to Sepultura to Fear Factory to Slipknot. And there was a model at the time that Fear Factory had Roadrunner had mastered, and that was, touring continuously, building a fan base, then growing at scale according to that success, getting into bigger tours, taking you out to radio, going after editorial outlets. Like, they had a formula that worked consistently for all their bands. And, we signed at a point when that model was still in place. And then a few different things happened. 2001 happened, and the shift between, heavy music to kind of more format friendly rock began, because it was hard to play songs like Let the Bodies Hit the Floor and Dragula on radio, because the sentiment after 9/11 was not that aggressive. At the same time, Roadrunner was breaking Nickelback, which was all of a sudden just knocking down doors everywhere. And the label moved from full independent distribution to being a part of Island Def Jam. And all of a sudden, that came with a new sense of scale and a new sense of urgency around what success could look like. And that dovetailed into Nickelback, Theory of a Dead Man, Jerry Cantrell, some of those more radio format friendly bands of the early 2000s that Roadrunner was putting out. And for us, a band that was a part of that previous independent tour heavy model, it's like musical chairs. All of a sudden, there isn't a chair for you anymore. And in my conversations with the A&R folks, the exact phrase that was used was, listen, in order for you to move forward here, this needs to be more about business and less about art. And I look back at him, I was like, I'm 26 years old and I have no idea what that statement actually means. I sing in a heavy metal band and this is kind of just who we are. And, within 120 days, we were out of every deal that we had: management, publishing, label, agent. It was a pretty quick slide down
Like,
to
what did
being.
they want you to do? Like, make a ballad or something, or like what? I mean,
Well,
you're
I'll
like,
give you an example. At the time, you had Nickelback.
yeah, they
And
couldn't expect you to go Nickelback, right?
no, but at the exact moment that we were having this conversation, Corey Taylor is breaking records with Bother. And all of a sudden, the singer from Nickelback is playing an acoustic song that is just as powerful as any Stain song, any Nickelback song. It's on the Spider-Man soundtrack. It's breaking records at radio. So you're showing a model where this can be done. Now, they look at us because on our first record, we had an acoustic song like Goodnight. I am still singing throughout the record. So if there was a way to massage this to a place where we could maybe do something like that, then maybe there would be a conversation about a future. But that wasn't something we were naturally moving towards, the way Corey had success with Slipknot and was maybe just exploring his own musicality and moving into, what would eventually become a solo career and eventually Stone Sour. So again, it's not like we're mad about anything. We just recognized how far along the vision of Roadrunner was to evolve their artist base, and we just weren't there yet. We were still young kids on a first record that didn't really know how to work with producers, didn't really know how to stretch and grow as songwriters. We were kind of like, I don't know, we're just a metal band. We're just gonna do what metal bands do. We just didn't have context. We didn't have a strong manager that could help guide us. It just wasn't in the cards for us. And that's just part of the story. So,
do you regret that part of it? Do you wish that you would have done it differently, or are you happy the way things worked out?
I mean, shit, man, I can't go back and play General after the war. That would be silly. All I can do now is just take from the life lessons and kind of look at the experiences. I just say, okay, well, where do we go from here? I mean, listen, we were never in a position. It would have been the proverbial Hail Mary for a band that had sold 26,000 records at that point on their first album to all of a sudden come up with some Hail Mary ballad that's going to do a platinum record, because that's kind of the expectation. And all of a sudden, we're going to be a heavy new metal band that's what? Going to turn into the new Stained because you need that to fill a gap? We're just not that. We just didn't have the capacity to do that. And they were very successful without us doing that. You had bands like Il Nino that started to skyrocket after that, building into the formula that Roadrunner was very successful. So again, there's a lot of opportunities. And at the same time that all of that's happening, you have this very small band from Boston called Kill Switch Engage that is just completely annihilating the whole face of aggressive music. And not only are they stylistically completely different than nu metal or anything that's come before them, but they're doing it all themselves. Adam D is producing everything himself. So it's like in a world of like needing a Ross Robinson and needing a producer to come in and kind of guide your vision, all of a sudden, like Adam could do everything himself and he's crushing the guitar live. I mean, okay, like what's even happening in this world anymore? Like it's so crazy now. So I get it. Roadrunner was just exploding. It was a wonderful time. Listen, and we're totally thankful to be on that label. We wouldn't be here without that record. We just had the run that we had, and that's just the story of the band,
Yeah. Well, one person that was a big fan of your band was Dave Mustaine, right? Didn't he handpick you guys to tour with Megadeth?
Yeah, we were so fortunate. I mean, that is the biggest tour we've ever been on, was Gigantour. And when they were putting that tour together, Dave's the one they chose us to open. And, as kind of legend has it, he was turned on to the band because Justice was into the band. And Justice at the time was like, hey, Dry Kill is a pretty cool band, told his dad. Justice was young at that point. This is 20 some odd years ago. But we were really fortunate to be on that tour. And that was one where it was like, holy shit, like this is crazy. I mean, we're back out with Fear Factory, which is awesome, but you have Life Agony and you have Symphony X and you have Dream Theater and Megadeth and like just all these awesome bands. And it was just really cool. Like that was a fun experience.
Did you get to like hang out with them backstage? Because I hear different things when I talk to musicians. Some say, oh, they just kept to their bus or their dressing room. And other people say, no, yeah, we all hung out. We're best friends.
Yeah, I mean, listen, to the point that Dave has time to hang out with, the second of 15 bands on the bill, but he was very gracious to us. He gave us a wonderful bottle of champagne for being on the tour. We did see each other backstage and we would hang with all the bands. So it was a communal feeling that everybody's kind of just in motion throughout the day and throughout the night. But we never wanted to, be a bother. But yeah, we would see each other, moving around and walking around the venues and whatnot. So everyone was very friendly and very nice. So yeah, there was no pretense, no attitudes, no egos. And again, we're just happy to be here no matter where we are. So we're not running much interference on anything that's going on. We're just, happy to be in the room no matter what room it is.
Yeah. Do you like those big shows versus where there's like 20 bands? Because I know you're playing like the Aftershock festival or whatever. Do you like those kinds of things, or do you like more like the smaller club where it's your crowd that people are going directly just for you?
I'll be honest with you. I don't really know. And I'll tell you why I say that.
Okay.
Hey, it's been 20 years and I've kind of forgotten a lot of things, right? But we've never played a show, like we just played Rockville, for example. We never played on a stage that big, never played to that size audience before. I have no context of being on a 60-foot wide stage with 6,000 people in front of me at 2 p.m. I mean, that whole experience is like, well, that's a first. I have no idea what this is like. So that's crazy. And then now we're playing these headline shows, and these are in more familiar venues, smaller venues, 300, 500 cap. But last time we played those rooms, we were a young band on the album cycle that, hey, we're Draculagic, it's our first album, or hey, we're Draculagic, this is our second record, like the third time we've ever been to your town. 20 years later, people have built a relationship with these songs, that kind of is a longer relationship with the music than we were an active band. So now when we think about these smaller intimate rooms, the level of fan that's going to be in this room is a 20-year fan. I've never played to a fan that's knows the music this intimately. I've only played to a fan where I'm like, hi, this is a new record. Would you like to consider having it in your life? Now, 20 years later, to play for them and like, yeah, we took your advice and we've been listening ever since. I don't know. So I'm really excited to have that emotion too. We never had anybody like super fans that know the records this intimately play before. So I'm really excited to kind of get to the end of this touring experience and just decide for myself almost like which one was better. How do we feel about it? Like, do we like these things? Do we not like these things? I just have no context. I don't barely remember anything. And it all feels so different now when I try to compare it.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, well, one of your albums of Vengeance and Violence, I mean, it's such an intense energy on that one. What are can you share like your insights with the creative process for that? Like, how do you get so hyped up, making something like that? Like, are drugs involved, or is it just freaking getting angry and working out and punching things, or?
Yeah, I mean the anger is the dopamine, you know what I mean?
Okay.
That's the fun part, is being angry and like expressing that constructively. But that was an interesting record. We were coming off of The Dead and Dreaming, and we were on an independent label, Repossession Records, that had a new distribution deal with, then ADA, which has become 75 other distributors since then. But at the time, um, Repossession needed to continue to keep the pipeline full and just keep product in the market. So we had just come off of The Dead and Dreaming, and they were like, "Hey, any chance we could get 2 releases from you guys this year?" And I was like, well, fucking cool. How's that going to work? We just came off the road. We have no idea. So what we did was we started the writing process. I made the DVD that is in the Magellan Complex. I never made a DVD before. I never made a video before. It's 2005. I just loaded a bunch of stuff into my Mac and went into the editing program. Was like, okay, here's a video of some stuff. And then we took some of the demos and did a cover and just, a couple of covers and threw that on there. It was like, okay, here, you can have this for one, but you can't charge more than $6 for it because it's not worth more than $6, to be honest. And then we kept working on the record. And I think when we came off the road, musically, we knew what we wanted to do, but we just needed some time. Like, we knew we wanted to do something different. We knew we wanted to continue being aggressive, and we wanted to push some boundaries. I knew I wanted to try to write maybe a little bit more complex lyrics that had maybe a little bit more of a story that wove throughout the song. The first couple of albums were always like smash, smash, very angry, smash, smash. And this one was like very angry, maybe a little bit more eloquent, so tried to just phrase it to be a little bit more evolved, a little bit more adult. But we did it very fast. And then we released that also in September 2006. And then the label folded and we went on a hiatus. So all that work for naught. But we haven't played those songs in the US. In 2006, we toured Europe twice and Australia once, and we played the songs there, just one time, just to test them out on one tour. So these songs are essentially new to anyone in the US. We'd never played them here. So introducing stuff to folks like that, I think, is really interesting in this opportunity too.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. So there's probably been a lot of fans that have been waiting for this for a long time.
If social media content and conversation is to be believed, that that's the number one thing folks have been asking for, is when can we see you live? When can we see you live? And then, now it's like, okay, well, we have these shows this year. And now the second question is, when do we get a record? When do we get a record? So hopefully that'll be, coming as well.
Yeah, it seems like the new process is just to more have like the singles and put the singles out. Like, people care more about the singles than it used to be about the singles when the pop music first hit, and then it became all about the album. And now it's like going back to the singles, it seems like.
To your point, like, people digest as they go instead of releasing everything. I think it's twofold for us. Number one, the industry doesn't seem to be receptive to the idea of a singles-based artist, release schedule, to just kind of do it at whim. People pay attention to bodies of work. People pay attention to record releases. It's easier to wrap your mind around. It's easier to promote. It's easier to talk about. So it seems like a full body of work still gets more runway than just singles. But I think within that, to be honest, what I would like to have is not so much an album as like releasing 11 songs at once. I think we need a body of work. And I think we're excited now to create a body of work. You release it, 4 releases of 3 songs each, 12 releases, singles, 1 12-song album, however you do it. You just need the body of work. You need the songs. So that's the part that we're most excited to think about now, is how do we just go in and start writing the best songs possible? And then people far smarter than us will be like, hey, this is the right way to release it out into the world. So less married to the format, more married to the idea that even if you're going to dribble out singles, you got to have them all recorded first. So that's what we're, angling towards.
Yeah. I think the one thing that's cool for as a fan is just seeing when bands do, if they do release an album, because obviously you guys don't make any money on the streaming, or it's very little, but some of the bands have gotten creative with this and said, okay, the vinyl's big, so they'll put things on vinyl, and then they'll get real creative and have all these different kinds of props. Like I'm trying to remember what band it was that the thing came in, like it was like a wooden like coffin. It was so cool. Like they're getting very creative with like kind of the boxes and the packaging to kind of sell it more, so that a fan would be like, oh, I want that, because it's like this whole thing. I know for me, I'm a big Guns N' Roses fan, and they had those box sets. And it's like, of course you can get those songs on Spotify for free, but to get this box set with all the pictures and a laminate and all this like cool little, little accessories, I think that stuff's kind of fun.
No, you're right. And for us, I think we're twofold. Number one, we don't really know what people want. Again, we just don't know. We have no context, right? So to your point, they've been living with the music digitally for, a generation now, essentially. So as you start to think about different ways to consume that music, are you interested in those physical items? Is the digital stuff, do you kind of have that married into your mind? Like, we need to learn a little bit more about what our audience would like from us. And then I think we're totally cool with making it. If there's anything that we're somewhat conscious of in all of this, it's I might not be able to tell you the one definitive reason why we're doing any of this, but I can tell you one definitive reason that we're not doing any of this, and we're not doing this for money. None of us 20 years later are like, hey, let's go make some money off some fans that seem to. We don't give a shit. We all have jobs. We all have lives. We're going to pay our bills. It's going to be just fine. So like, we're also a little cautious about like, looking greedy and like, hey, I'm here in a 300 cap room and you have 73 t-shirts and 45 different vinyls and 63 different, mezcals that you're offering with a partner of a CD and a cassette. You know what I mean? Like, people be like, what, did you make all this stuff just to sell it to us? So we're conscious and somewhat cognizant of that. We do. I mean, again, people want stuff. They're like, hey, make us things. We're just trying to be respectful of the dollar and just like, hey, what would you like? Would you like merch? We'll make you like some awesome merch. Would you like vinyl? We'll get to the vinyl. Like, it just feels, I don't know. We're just kind of cautious about that stuff. And I don't know. Maybe it's just our Italian guilt or my Italian guilt that kicks in when I start to think about the commercialization of it. Just freaks me out sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess if you don't have to worry about that, is that that's not a top priority. I know, but one thing that is like a huge thing for the fans that I feel like a lot of bands are not as interested in, but it has been a good moneymaker for them, is the meet and greets. Like, how do you feel about that? Is that something that you want to do? Do you want to charge for that? Or do you want to have a reduced rate or do it for free? Or,
that's a wonderful question. And, I don't begrudge anyone for any behavior that they do. Being out on the road touring is a very expensive proposition. So I can see a world where like those things could make sense. For us right now, we'll just meet you at the merch booth, man. We'll see. If you bought a t-shirt, I can't believe you bought a t-shirt. I can't believe charging you $1 to sit in the same room as me and be like, I'm just taking your money now. This is crazy. So yeah, we'll just meet you at the merch booth. We'll see you at the bar. We'll meet you outside. Like, we'll take all the pictures. I don't give a shit. Like, it's fine. Totally cool. But again, I don't grudge anyone. I'm fascinated by the business that it does. There's a real fan base for stuff. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, there's bands that I mean, you would not think this band could charge this much for a meet and greet, but they do, and people buy it. So
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, God bless that. I'm just amazed. I'm like, that's so awesome. It's not. I just think that's part of the world that is just so new to me.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't have an opinion about it because I don't know enough about anything to have any opinions. I just know that behaviorally, if I look back at how we do things. Give us 10 minutes to get out of these wet clothes, man, and we'll see you at the merch booth. We'll be there in a second,
That's awesome.
Wait outside, then we'll just come back inside and hang out with y'all and party. So that's just kind of how we operate on that stuff. But
that's cool. So the you guys all have day jobs, and the day jobs don't interfere with any of the touring conflicts or anything?
Well, no, I mean, if you think about the way that we're doing this now, we're being really strategic. Touring is a very relative term. We're strategically playing shows where they make sense for us. So, you go to Rockville, it's on a Sunday, you play a couple of festivals, Wednesday, Friday, these things, we can manage it with our schedules. I think that, if there were ever a universe that provided an opportunity that made sense to tour at scale, over time, we would have to consider that. But if you're made an offer that you can't refuse, then you must take it as seriously as it must be taken. So I think we're open to all conversations, but it's not like, get in the van. We're getting the van back. You know, it's like we're managing it with reasonable expectations. So
Yeah, because it looks like most of the upcoming shows you guys have are these big festivals.
yeah, we have these 2 headline shows coming up in a couple of weeks in New York and New Jersey. Brooklyn on the 13th at the Monarch and the 14th at Dingbats in New Jersey. And then to your point, after that, it's all festivals. So we fly in, we fly out. You know, it's easy
Yeah.
schedule.
That's what I've seen a lot of bands do. Have you looked into casino gigs? Because those are really fun and fun for the fans, fun for the band, and I think they pay very well to the band too. I guess that's not a major factor for you guys, but it is kind of probably be nice to get it.
Yeah, listen, I mean, again, like covering costs is always awesome.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just not a money-making exercise, right? Like we don't necessarily want to make a ton of money, but don't want to be in the red,
Yeah.
obviously either. And to your point, I think now what we're really also interested in discovering is like where are the places that we should go that have audiences that are receptive to the band? Like, you know, I mean, yeah, we've done a fair amount of touring in our life, but where are the places that we should go if we want to kind of celebrate 20 years of the Dead and Dreaming, or just kind of reconnect with folks and play these, you know, 300 to 500 cap rooms? We don't have like, delusions of grandeur. We don't have, you know, again, unreasonable expectations. But where should we go? And I think that's going to be part of the exercise for our agency into 2026 is to try to figure out like, hey, like what markets beyond New York and New Jersey would be receptive to Dry Kill headliner shows? And then we'll start to think about, you know, going out to those as well. And, you know, that could be just a whole year in and of itself. So we're just excited to see folks that are excited to see us. To be honest, we've played so many places that to go back to any of them now is really an exciting proposition, to be honest.
Yeah. And so who, because you've had some lineup changes. So how does that work with, I mean, with this current lineup? I'm assuming these are people that were in the band, or you've gotten some new members.
Well, with the exception of the drummer, Jason Bozzi, our guitar player, has been with us since the Dead and Dreaming. Brendan Kane, who's our bass player, has been with us also since that same time, but he was in other bands, so he couldn't join the band. He joined us in 2005, and he's been with us ever since. He toured with us in Europe on the Vengeance and Violence. So he's been with us forever. So the core nucleus, the 3 of us, have been together for 20 years. We're all incredibly close. We hang out all the time. So like, the core of Dry Kill is still the same. Our drummer now is Kevin Buto, who used to be the drummer for the Acacia Strain. He's a monster player. Such a great, wonderful addition to the band. We're super fortunate to have him behind the drums. And to be honest, this is really just the toughest version of this band that's ever been. I mean, Brendan was in 100 Demons and 1,000 Falling Skies. So you have this like toughness to the music in the rhythm section that just complements Jay. And it's really just a treat to play with such a sonically strong band.
Yeah, I see. I think the drumming in this kind of in this kind of metal that you guys are doing is so underrated. I had the drummer actually from Killswitch on my show, and I was trying like he's so modest, but I'm like, dude, I am so impressed by how fast you can play those guys, like in Slayer and stuff. All those kind of metal bands. I feel like the drumming is very underrated. I feel like that would be a very hard thing physically to do.
I mean, I can't do it on a drum set for like a count of 4, right? I can't do it for like a
Yeah,
4
right?
count.
Yeah.
These guys are doing it for 75 minutes. You
And
know what I mean? Like,
multiple
how are you
pedals
doing
and
this?
yeah.
And this hand's just going so fast. And this hand's just keeping the beat and the feet. And it's like, I don't get it, man. I mean, again, that is a talent that I enjoy, in a world of like playing instruments poorly. Drums is one of them, but I watch a real drummer play and I realize how far away I am from being a real drummer, especially in the metal genre. The talent level is just off the charts. Speed is just so underrated, and the performance of these guys, drum for Killswitch, all these bands, I'm just
Yeah,
impressed.
I hope that never goes away because I know that some bands want to use the drum machines or whatever, but I'm like, I can't. I like to watch a real person do it. It's amazing. It really is, like you said, it's a talent that it's like, I think it's underrated, and I hope it never does go away, because I know a lot of, obviously, the pop music, they use drum machines, but I hope that doesn't happen to metal and rock, that they start using
Long live the
tracks.
drum cam, man. Long live the drum cam. I love one of my favorite drum cams to watch is Eloy on all of these Slipknot tours. And I'm like, dude, you're just a monster behind that kid. Like, just watching him muscle out those beats. I'm like, my God, you're just beating up. It's like a mugging every time. You're just beating up this drum set when you play. So awesome to watch. I love the drum cam perspective.
That is so, yeah. So like when you go to like Aftershock, because I mean, there's so many crazy bands that are playing there, like Korn and Perfect Circle, Marilyn Manson. Like, are you going to just do your set and then go? I mean, I feel like that'd be the best thing about being on a bill like that, is just having a backstage pass to watch all these other bands.
Pretty much. And the best part about being on early is that you get done. You got the rest of the day just floating around. No more responsibility. I'm done. I go have catering. I go get a drink. I go watch these bands. So yeah, that's the most fun, to be honest, is just kind of sit off to the side of the stage and just watch how it all kind of unfolds, and to see how other bands operate, and to see their stage shows. And yeah, again, the perspective is just so fascinating, and to be able to be a part of it, like, we're just incredibly grateful after all this time to just be able to even witness it, much less perform, just to be able to sit on the side of the stages and watch all these artists, do their thing. It's like, my God, what an awesome perspective. So,
yeah. What is it? What have you learned from, I mean, cause you guys toured with Motorhead too. Like, I mean, Lemmy, you must have learned things from him. He must have had some wisdom.
Yeah. I mean, Motorhead till you're dead. I mean, we played a few shows with those guys, and, again, when you're around legacy musicians like that, and you're around people that, you just consider preeminent thought leaders in the genre, when it comes to writing, when it comes to stage shows, when it comes to connections and interactions with the audience, like, and it's easy for them to be distracted, and it's easy for them to be aloof, and it's easy for them to be thinking about something else, and to kind of just operate in a universe where, like, they're just always busy all the time. And maybe, they have moments of reflection or moments of engagement. But that's one of the things I thought that was always different about Lemmy and the guys in Motorhead. Like, they walk into the dressing room and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And you're like, "Holy shit." Like, Mickey D's here talking to my drummer about, like, things about drum, and you're like, and Lemmy's talking about, like, political war, like, and you're just like, I'm definitely the dumbest one in this fucking room, and I'm the most intimidated, because I don't want to say a goddamn thing, but I'm sitting here drooling like an idiot in front of Lemmy. You're like, oh, and again, like, he's just so smart and so gracious and so down to earth. And I just remember all those guys were just, they come in the dressing room, they hang out, they eat some catering, you ask a question, they sit down. Lemmy will smoke and go play a video game in the corner for 6 hours. He didn't get, like, you're just like, oh, just playing a video game, that's it. Video game. Like,
so, okay, so it's like a big kid almost, but like, but also like really smart.
Yeah, I mean, they were really one of the smartest people I've ever met. I mean, just somebody that had such a well-rounded perspective on basically everything. He had a really well-informed opinion about so much, and you would talk to him, and he would just, he'd be very articulate, so he'd explain himself very simply, and you realize you can't do the same. You may have thoughts, but you can't get them out of your head. He just had a way of communicating where, like, didn't have to say a lot, but he said so much. You took away so much from it that you knew what he was talking about without him really having to, like, repeat himself or, use the wrong words. You just remember them being incredibly eloquent, Lemmy especially.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, just doing this podcast, like meeting some of these guys, like D. Snyder and stuff, they have this like personality, and you're just like, oh, this guy's like a star. Like, he just has this star persona. And yeah, they just, like, when they talk, you listen and you're like, wow, like, it's just something about, like, I'm sure Lemmy had that as well. I never met him, but
yeah, no, I mean, to your point, like, there's a magnetism that you just can't kind of tear yourself away from. And whether that's how they carry themselves, or how they speak, or what they say, whatever it is, just like this magnetism, you're just drawn to it. And to your point, like, that's the rock star effect, happening and unfolding in front of you. And it's awesome to see it, when you see someone who's really got that, it's like, wow, man, you're just a star. You just command the room no matter what room you're in.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated. Like, how do they do that? Is it just natural? They're just born with it. I feel like a lot of times they're just born with. That's just who they
Yeah,
are.
I don't think you can be taught that. I think
Yeah,
you don't try. It's just who you are, you know.
yeah. It is. It's so interesting. But yeah, then and like you said, like a lot of them. They're so down to earth. Like they don't think they're not usually not super cocky. Like, and they're not insecure because they're just this is who they are, and they're just being themselves.
Yeah, there's a relatability, right? Like in the best artist to fan relationship, as an artist, you see yourself in the audience the same way the audience sees themselves in you. And someone like Lemmy, you look at Lemmy and you're like, I could be like Lemmy, like he's down to earth. I'm down to earth. He says funny things. Maybe I say funny things. And that's what makes them like, the superstars. Like we got a person with like a rock star ego and you're like, oh, okay, you're like great at the guitar. And like, yeah, you're like a guy and you get on the stage and you wear the clothes and you say the things like, that's cool. But when you meet someone where it's like, oh, you're all that and you're just a dude, like, whoa, that's where I think that's the magic of it,
Right. But then it's so interesting too, because then some people, they don't really have that persona or like magnetism, but they're so fascinating as artists and they create such amazing work. Like I just think of like, Maynard from Perfect Circle, who you're going to be performing with, and Tool. And he actually lived, I don't know if he still does, but he did live, I'm in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, but he lived in a town called Jerome that was like 2 hours from here. It's a tiny little town. And he lived there for some reason. It was so weird. And I remember like asking the locals, like, oh, did you ever see like Maynard around? This one girl, she was like a waitress. She's like, yeah, that guy used to come in here like every day. And I didn't know he was like a big thing. Like he was very quiet. He was kind of weird. And like, I would serve him coffee and we didn't say much. And I didn't know who he was. Like, and so that I find it fascinating. There's people at the other end of the spectrum too, but are also very famous, very successful, very amazing artists.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, right? Like it's always interesting when you see folks where like the talent shines through first, somebody that's somewhat unassuming and then all of a sudden they sing and you're like, you have that voice, or they play the guitar like they're, 100 years older than they are and they lived a life that, that they haven't lived. And you're like, where's that coming from? And you're like, no, that's me. And you're like, well, my God, that's just something that's crazy. So yeah, like the magnetism, the raw magnetism is an appeal. But yeah, when you are talented, there's no denying it, because some people, you can have that magnetism, but maybe you're not so good on the instrument and you rely a little bit more on that,
That's like a David Lee Roth, I'm thinking is more, that's like, it's all personality with him.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just such an interesting dynamic when you're in front of folks to see how unique they are. And to your point, maybe even more, interesting are the moments when they're not on stage, on camera, and they're like just the quiet person in the back of the cafe that's like, why does that guy come in here every day? And it's like, because this is the only place he can go and just sit like a normal person that doesn't get recognized. He probably is thrilled to be considered weird. Like, yeah, I'm just a weird, quiet guy. Totally fine. I could be that here. Happy to be that here,
Right. Yeah. There's definitely those like those levels of fame. Like, what was that? I think I was talking to like, was it Alice Cooper's guitar player, Ryan Roxy, about that? Like, because,
I heard that
plays,
interview. Yeah.
oh, you know him? Yeah. He's like super nice guy. But I was like saying, like, do you ever get recognized? He's like, yeah, like the day of the concert, like, near the fans, of course, they're like, oh, like they think they're this big thing. You're on stage and stuff. He's like, but then other times, like just, regular places, like nobody, he's kind of in between. Whereas like Alice Cooper, like, I saw him at the mall here in Phoenix and I was like, that's Alice Cooper. Like, I mean, he can't go to the mall without somebody like me, like a nerdy rock fan's going to recognize him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's still Alice Cooper. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Right.
And to your point, that's the best line to walk is when you experience that level of fame, but you're not beholden to it in a way where it's traps you. So yeah, that's the best life to live is when you can experience it, but not be, chained to it.
Yeah, because you guys have a lot of, I mean, you have like, I think it was like 250,000 followers on Spotify or something like that. I was like, holy cow, that's a huge following.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a band that, you know, if I had to put us on a tech timeline, began at cassette tapes and ended at MySpace. You know, they didn't have YouTube when we stopped making, you know, music. It didn't exist. So to your point, like the idea that 250,000 people every month are streaming 4 songs every time they listen 20 years after that record came out, I don't okay, like, that's amazing. I don't know how to feel about that because we never operated in a world where that was possible, you know? And it's funny because I look at those things and my knee-jerk reaction is, "Where were all of you guys when we were playing to 50 people?" You know? And every answer generally is something to the effect of, "I was 7." You know, or
Right.
I was in my dad's
Well,
car, or I was in high school, or like I wasn't
yeah.
born yet, you know. So it's rare when people are like, "Oh, I don't know, I missed you the first time." Most people are like, "Whoa, we just found out about you." And then
Yeah.
that part's like, "Wow,
Well,
how
that's the thing.
great."
I think when I remember being a kid and buying, and I used to buy a lot of CDs. I was a huge music fan, but I couldn't buy every CD. So I think that's the one thing that I know artists don't like the streaming because they don't make as much money from it, but it does help fans discover a lot of bands. There's a lot of music that I've discovered through streaming that I just never would have been able to discover because I just could not buy all those CDs. But now if I find a band that I like, then I go support them. I'll have them on my show. I will go to their concert. I'll buy their merch. I'll buy the t-shirts and stuff, because I want to support them.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I am a much bigger fan of music as a utility than music as a commodity. I just think that, you know, music is like water, it's like lights. Turn it on when you want it, turn it off when you don't. If you rely on the idea that this is a commodity and you're going to have to own everything you ever want to experience, you don't have enough. Nobody has even at $1 a song. It's an untenable business model if you are a voracious consumer of music. So this whole streaming thing, it's like, you know, listen, Universal's making just enough money on Drake and The Weeknd and Kendrick Lamar. So like streaming's paying somebody. You know, that's where it's like I think that when artists, you know, knee-jerk reaction to streaming's bad, no money. I'm like, yeah, well, let's take a look at the fine print in the deal to understand where the money's going. Because yeah, there's a percentage of the pie, right? There's no per stream amount. It's a percentage of the pie that's distributed to all of the people in the pie. So, you know, just again, it's like this idea of if I work and I work and I get these numbers up and I get these things going, they can pay out over time. And then it just continues. It's not that one-time hit of, hey, I sold one CD, I got to sell another CD, I got to sell another CD. I just need to put it up and just let you go and then just continue to make you want it. It's a much different exercise, it feels like, from a marketing perspective. So I'm just fascinated by the comparison. And again, you know, I understand if you were successful in an old model and now you have a new model and it's not the same. I get the difference. Again, it's no indictment. I haven't been successful in any model. So who am I to have any opinions about what you should or should not feel in any given instance? But I do think it is fascinating. Just feels like there's untapped potential now to be successful. Whereas before,
Yeah.
you know, the business was just a little bit harder to break.
Right. It's like you said, there was those gatekeepers, which it was so, and I mean, it's the same thing with like podcasting. Cause it's like, I couldn't have started if I guess I could have tried to do a radio show back in the 90s or something. I would have had to get on some local channel and hope that enough people see it in my town and then try to work my way through and go to all these radio. I mean, I saw that Howard Stern movie, like what he had to do. Like, but now I could just get on, turn on the camera, and I can stream out to the entire world. I mean, not everyone's going to watch it, but then the problem is everybody can do that. So now I'm competing with all these other people that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And then the question becomes, how much harder are you willing to work than everybody else? And I'm not saying you,
Right. No.
the royal you, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
like when you're in that moment where everything's democratized and you're all at the starting line and everybody's going to run the race, how fast are you? You know,
Yeah.
how long will you run for? And then this becomes the exercise of like, you know, it took us 7 years to get to our first record deal. You know, you think about putting in 7 years into anything before the proverbial return. You know, today's world, that's a long time to invest in something. So, but that's the exercise, is that you have to put in the time. And maybe it's shorter now. Maybe it's 12 months, 16 months, 2 years. I don't know. And maybe that's the benefit of this new model, is that you don't have to spend 7 years bleeding a dream. but you do have to spend some amount of time bleeding a dream. It's that part I don't think is ever going to change. So that's the part where it's like, yeah, it's just exciting because you don't have to go through like, I got to find a radio station. Then I have to be beholden to the radio station is going to do the right amount of marketing. And then I have to be beholden to the idea that there's enough people in town that know about me and this show that they're going to tune in. And then I have to make sure that they like what they hear when they finally do tune in. And then I got to wait for the radio and I got to make sure that right, like all that's gone. It's like turn on the mic, talk to people, see the reaction, do something different or do the same thing again. Like that to me is much cooler than the previous, right? But it comes with its own set of circumstances. Nothing in life is easy.
Yeah, the thing with the podcasting is like it's different because I feel like if you have any sort of level of celebrity, like the guys from Cheers started a podcast, so like immediately they have more subscribers than me because they're building on their reputation. So, and I think that could be the same in a way with music. Like if they have some sort of reputation in the past, it's got a jumpstart over a band that's starting from nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I'll be honest, the way that I've always looked at it is the harder you work, the luckier you get. You know, that's it. You know, people always say, oh, you know, you got that one in a lifetime, you know, you were working as a Starbucks barista and then all of a sudden some guy came in and said, hey, I like you. I'm going to give you the job of your dreams. And that's just, you know, lightning in a bottle. And it's like, no, I worked every shift I could at that Starbucks. I took overtime. I came in when I was sick. I just busted my ass. I didn't even recognize this guy, but this guy came in and saw me because I was there. I wasn't even in a good mood when he saw me, but he just saw me. And that, like, you can't replace that part. So the fact that you worked hard, then you got lucky because you worked hard. It's like, you cannot have one. You have to work hard.
You increase the odds significantly. I mean, doing these interviews, that's what I've learned by putting yourself, like the hard work. And then also like a lot of it for music too is being in or at least it used to be. I don't know if this is still a big thing, but a lot of the musicians will move to cities where there's a music scene. Like if you live in Cleveland, you're probably not going to make it unless you move to LA or New York or now Nashville, and Vegas has kind of got a little bit of a scene going now. And so these other bigger towns for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the part that I'm kind of interested in too, because it's like, you know, I come from that world of like, you got to move somewhere to make it somewhere, right? You have to go where the big clubs are, the big radio station or the big editorial outlet, you know, whatever, New York, LA, you know, the stories of moving to Hollywood to make it. But now it seems like in a social setting, and again, I'm not a backpack rapper, I'm not a SoundCloud rapper, I'm not a, you know, an internet star, an island boy or any of these things, but it doesn't feel like you need to do that anymore if you are starting in the social stratosphere. It's almost a point of pride to be from like East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania with 7 million followers and you got some hit song on TikTok. It's like, yeah, I didn't move anywhere. I moved from the living room to the basement. And you know what I mean? But
the biggest YouTuber, Mr. Beast, is like, he was from like Cleveland or some Ohio or Indiana or something like small town, just did most of it out of his bedroom and he became the biggest YouTuber. It's crazy.
Seriously. And that's like, you know, a predictive model of success. Like you don't necessarily need to do that. So maybe that's where it's all headed. And again, I'm just so fascinated by the difference and just the different ways that people become successful today.
Me too.
That I find myself in constant like observation of like, oh, how did this happen? Like, oh, I'm looking at this thing. I think it's off. How did it happen? Just tell me how it happened. Show me how it happened. I'm just so interested in the backstory. And then you read about backstory. It's like, awesome. So what are you going to do now? You know what I mean? Like what comes next? Like, okay, lightning in a bottle. Boom. How do you do it again? So I'm just, it's like, it's just always good to learn, I think.
It seems like a lot of times too, there's some sometimes, not every time, but a lot of times there could be some sort of gimmick or branding, like because you mentioned Slipknot and that made me think of like, remember they had the masks and stuff, like when they first came out, that was very unique. There wasn't a lot of bands doing that, so they stood out.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you see it, I think today, again, not the same approach because you shouldn't be doing anything that everybody else is doing, but the theater of today's, you know, metal, I think is really interesting.
Like Ghost,
the motionless in white, the Ghost, the avatars, you know, there is this theater in the production and in the live show elements. And that's another thing that I think is so interesting. Like you don't need a ton of money to have a really visually stimulating show. And then that has a lot of work too. I mean, again, like everything has to run to a click. you know, there's movement and motion between samples and starts and stops. And, you know, if you miss one click, the background doesn't work anymore. Now your lighting cues are off. And it's like this whole symphony of movement that has nothing to do with the music, but has everything to do with the music. But like you see these groups, and I'm just so fascinated by their shows. It's, you know, you said it earlier, you know, talking about like how Tool used to be one of the most mysterious and visually stimulating live shows because they use lights and they use costumes and they just represented themselves in shadows and all of these different ways. And it feels like a more modern version of that with a lot of the artists today and their live shows. And I'm here for it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think they have to up their game with the live show because they're not making any money on the record. So it's like, okay, so we got to make some of these ticket prices they're out of control. So it's like, it better be a pretty damn good show.
Yep. And then you pay all the money for that. And then all your money goes to pay for the show. So what's left? Paid meet and greets, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I the meet and greets it's so interesting. I feel like there's a lot of podcasters that I'm like, I watch a lot of podcasts because I'll do research on the guests that I'm having on, and I watch a lot of podcasts. And I feel like a lot of podcasters, I'm like, dude, you should just have a paid meet and greet. Like I don't know why you're doing a podcast. Like it's so interesting to see that though.
You know, I really enjoy comedy podcasts, and I think one of the ones that I really like is the Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast. And I noticed that they do a lot of stuff, like they have a Patreon. So like they'll do a free podcast and then they'll move a lot of that conversation over to the Patreon. So to your point, like what is that line of free versus paid content? Like where do you kind of monetize some of that long form stuff? So yeah, it's a really interesting proposition because again, they have a huge fan base. Fans are into the idea. They're not offended by the idea that they want to be part of an exclusive club to get exclusive humor. So again, like you're making available the exact amount of demand you know, supply that your audience is demanding. And I think that that's fair market commerce. You know, if you have an audience that wants to get like time with you and you just don't have the time to do it, and this is how it needs to be done, and it's not offensive to anyone, hey, well, God bless, man, you know, because the demand is there. And as long as the demand is there, then it's okay to supply. It's only when you're supplying and there's no demand that it seems a little
right.
one, you know what I mean?
Well, no, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of these bands are just, I think because you say you're not in it you guys have day jobs or whatever, but I think for some, they want to make it their main thing and they're trying just to make ends meet. I feel like it's tough. Like I know, like, I think Anthrax had to cancel a bunch of their shows because it just wasn't going to make sense financially for them to tour at the way that they were going, like the prices or something. So they just had to cancel the whole tour. I mean, it gets like when you're one of those bands that's like, you're not, you know, Taylor Swift or whatever, but like, you know, you should have enough of a following. You're trying to make a professional living. It gets tough nowadays.
No, and again, that's why I don't begrudge anyone that does it. And that was the caveat earlier. It's just like, hey, listen, you know, if you're out there working, you know, and we all know that touring is a very expensive proposition, especially when you're doing it at scale and you're doing multiple shows in a row and you're out on the road, you know, those are real hard costs that only continue to go up. So, you know, money has a ceiling. It's you know, you have to, if you're going to pay for something, you have to not pay for something somewhere else. So all of it makes sense to me. And again, it's just a matter of you have fans that are interested in that type of, you know, content and conversation. So it's like, dude, I would love to have a picture with you and I understand everything. Like this is reasonable. Let's do it. Again, I think it's fair. We're just sensitive that, you know, we're not at that point. And I don't think anybody at this stage after 20 years should have to come to the first show and pay for much of anything, especially time with a band that they haven't seen in, you know, a couple of decades.
Yeah.
If we're on the road all the time and there's a level of exclusivity that comes along with that type of meet and greet, I begrudge no one for that behavior. I just think for us, it's not the right fit right now. But
yeah, because I mean, you're also like, they're helping you out by if they post a picture with you and post that on social media, it's free advertising for the band.
yeah, I mean, God, and to think anybody even wants a picture with us after all this time, it's humbling, to be fair. Like, I'm surprised anybody wants a picture with us.
I mean,
but
250,000 followers on Spotify, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, no, we're very grateful for everybody that's, you know, still continued with the band. There's a lot to consume in this world, and the fact that you spend any of your time consuming us after all of this time, it's humbling. That means something. It's not lost on us that in a world of content, you want to hear Dry Kill. That's awesome, and we appreciate that.
Very cool. Well, the new song is out now, and then should people? I'm not sure. Is there a website I can put in the show notes, or just what's the best way to follow the
Dry
band?
Kill Logic on all the socials is the best way to find us. We're pretty active on that. Spotify, Dry Kill is, where you find all the music, and, we have a .com, but it's not a special property in the sense of, overriding anything we're doing on social. We're there far more.
And then the show dates will be on all that stuff too then.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Anything else to promote?
No, man, that's it. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Big thanks to everybody for listening. And I hope to see you soon in an upcoming show. We'll get as close to you as we can. I don't know when, but hopefully when we come to town in Arizona, we'll see you soon.
Yeah, let me know. I'll be here.
Awesome.
Okay, see ya.
Later, man.
One of a kind, from the rockers to the wise men.